The stars in the barren expanse barely shimmered, as if space itself had forgotten how to breathe. It was a dead stretch of void, cold and vast, uninhabited for centuries until the rift opened. A sharp pulse tore across the dark silence as 128 Varnak warships emerged from hyperspace, shimmering into formation like steel insects across a black canvas. The lead vessel, Vexcalion Prime, bristled with weapon arrays and radiant hull plating. Plasma veins ran along its frame like lifeblood, pulsing to the rhythm of power. The Dominion fleet had arrived in full force, expecting a challenge perhaps. Even a war dot instead. They found a speck, one ship, alone, suspended in the vastness like dust, caught in a god's breath. Scanners swept across the vessel. No known identification, no active weapon systems. Human origin confirmed. Size, light frigate, obsolete class. Hull integrity, questionable. Engine readings, faint. A whisper in the dark. On the Varnak bridge, Vice Marshal Threx Veron tilted. His massive head back and barked a guttural laugh, sharp and grating like stones scraped against steel. "This is it?" He snarled, mandibles twitching in amusement. "A relic? The humans must be sending their ghosts to die." His officers laughed too, some with clipped hisses, others with full-bodied howls. The tension they expected from a confrontation had melted into farce. The might of the Dominion called to respond to a beacon? Threx turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel." The holographic feed crackled into place. For a heartbeat, only darkness filled the screen. Then a single figure came into view, standing tall, still, framed by the dull blue glow of an ancient command deck. Captain Elias Wren. He did not flinch. He did not speak. He only stood, hands clasped behind his back, eyes steady as the void. His uniform was clean but worn. His face, lined by time and experience, bore no hint of fear, only the quiet weight of someone who had seen too much. Threx leaned forward, smirking. "Is this your idea of defense, Earth? A toy ship sent to stare. Down a god?" Still, Elias said nothing. On board the lone ship, the Nightingale's silence was not absence. It was precision, measured, controlled. The hum of the core was steady. The faint rhythm of power moved through the deck plates like a heartbeat long buried. Dustless consoles. Untouched chairs. A bridge built for a crew, now silent save for him. In the far corner, a single cryocamber stood locked behind reinforced glass. Its occupant unseen. Elias stepped forward, his boots echoing softly across the floor. He looked past the stars, past the fleet, past the mockery. "Sarah," he said softly. A soft chime responded, feminine and calm. "Yes, Captain?" His voice dropped to a whisper, each word wrapped in iron resolve. "Begin synchronization protocol." The ship's lights dimmed for just a moment. Then the deck began to pulse slow, steady, deep. Far beyond the range of Dominion sensors, space itself began to bend. The silence inside the Nightingale was not empty, it was coiled. Beneath the stillness, beneath the low hum of dormant power, something waited. Something ancient. Something unfinished. Captain Elias Wren stood at the edge of the command dais, his eyes tracing the swarm of Dominion ships now encircling them in a slow, tightening spiral. Each warship loomed like a beast in the dark, weapon systems glowing with idle malice. The Varnak Dominion had never been known for subtlety. Every movement was a display, every formation a threat. And now, every sensor on every ship was locked. On the Nightingale, ready to crush it with a single coordinated barrage. But Elias didn't blink. Behind him, the soft voice of the ship's AI, Sarah, broke the stillness. Synchronization complete. Quantum sublayer threading initialized. Probability fields aligning in 4 dimensions. "Delay final weave," Elias said quietly. Let them look a little longer. The voice paused, almost thoughtful. Understood. Captain. On the Dominion flagship Vexcalion Prime, Vice Marshal Threx Varen stalked toward his tactical console, claws clicking on the metal floor. He was irritated. Now no response from the human, no retreat, no movement at all. Just that. One figure, standing in an outdated war relic as if he were enough. Signal them again, Threx snapped. I want a response before I grind that husk into atoms. The communications officer tried. The screen flared. No reply. Threx narrowed his 4 eyes. Send a data pulse. Full spectrum. Overload their processors if we have to. But as the pulse left the Varnic ship, something strange happened. It bent. The signal fractured mid-transmission, its pattern folding, stretching, looping, and then returned. But it didn't come back as noise. It came back as music. A slow, deliberate harmonic tone echoed across every Varnic ship. Low at first, then rising unnaturally perfect, as if tuned to the nervous system of the listener. It was not human music. It wasn't even sound. It was vibration crafted from quantum resonance, broadcast into the fabric of space itself. Threx's mandibles clenched. Cut the feed, now. On board the Nightingale, Elias finally moved. He walked to the side panel near the sealed cryocamber and rested a hand on the casing. Through the glass, frost swirled softly, hiding what lay inside. Still stable? He asked. Sarah responded, Cryostasis integrity is within tolerance. Neural thread remains entangled. Elias said nothing for a moment. Then, without turning, he asked, And the signal? We received full spectrum distortion confirmation. They don't understand what they saw. Good, he said. They shouldn't. He stepped back onto the central bridge platform. As Sarah dimmed the light slightly, revealing deeper geometric patterns carved into the floor and bulkhead, symbols not part of any standard human architecture. Not anymore. These were remnants. Echoes dot from the outside. Nightingale still looked like a light frigate, a harmless antique. But deep in its core, things were waking. Systems not built by any government, not by any single mind. Technology grown, not manufactured, designed through recursive iteration across probability layers, seeded at the cost of lives, mistakes, and time loops during the disaster at New Carthage. That day, they lost everything, or so the galaxy believed. The truth was only one ship returned, but it returned with more than survivors. It came back stitched with fractured echoes of what might have been. Every possible death. Every impossible survival. It carried within it the quantum scars of every version of Elias Wren that had died trying to save humanity. They had built Sarah from those echoes, each one a lesson in failure. She was not simply an AI. She was the composite soul of 1,000 possible outcomes. And now she was ready to act. Probability veil holding? Elias asked. Yes, they see only one ship. But beneath the fold, we are many. He turned toward the forward viewport, where the enemy fleet stretched like a noose across the stars. I want every copy in alignment. All echoes. Every simulation. Loaded. We give them one chance. And if they don't take it, then we show them what a ghost fleet really is. Far away, in the engineering bay, Ensign Juno Marek watched SAIR's secondary core pulse with increasing tempo. Her fingers danced across the console, calibrating entanglement fields, aligning the stasis loop that connected them to something deeper. Her expression was calm, but inside her chest, her synthetic heart ticked faster. She was human, at least in form. But her DNA was grown-woven from the lost daughter of Captain Wren. Not a clone, not a copy. A vessel. A carrier for memory. Too fragile to exist in the real dot, and soon. She would remember everything. A soft chime echoed through the ship. Dominion fleet moving into strike formation. Sarah reported. Elias let out a slow breath, as if exhaling everything that came before this moment. Then it begins. He reached forward and placed his hand on the synchronization pad. Across the Darren expanse, the stars themselves seemed to ripple. The Dominion strike formation expanded like a metallic crown around the lone human vessel, engines glowing red and weapon systems fully primed. The darkness of the Darren expanse was suddenly alight with charging coils, plasma tethers, and targeting. Lasers. It was a performance of overwhelming power, orchestrated not just to destroy, but to send a message to every listening system across the galactic rim. This is what happens when you defy the Varnic Dominion. Vice Marshal Threx Varon stood at the apex of his war bridge, the forward screen framing the Nightingale like prey in a scope. His command ship, Vexcallion Prime, was built for annihilation 2 kilometers long, shielded by ablative armor thick enough to deflect asteroid impacts. Every ship under his command had trained together for years, synchronized for maximum kinetic devastation. He had defeated war clusters. He had raised planetary capitals, and yet something gnawed at him. The human vessels still hadn't moved. Why aren't they firing? One of his officers asked, unease creeping into her voice. They're frozen in fear, another laughed, though it rang hollow. Even their AI must know resistance is meaningless. Or, Threx growled, they're waiting. His claws flexed. No more waiting. He stepped to the helm. Prepare to fire. All ships, full saturation barrage, wipe it from space. But at that exact moment on the Nightingale, the lights flickered, not with failure, but with rhythm. Hello? Pulse moved through the bulkheads like a heartbeat accelerating. Sarah spoke. Captain, full simulation array is engaged. Quantum cores in resonance. Estimated survival probabilities? Elias asked. Against full Varnic assault, 0.007%. And counter engagement? There was a pause. Then, variable, undefined, limitless. Then run all outcomes, he said. Let's show them what it means to challenge probability. The Dominion fired. A blinding curtain of energy erupted from 128 ships' plasma beams, graviton disruptors, hypersonic railfire, and antimatter shells. The barrage converged on the Nightingale, space itself bending beneath the pressure. But the ship didn't dodge, it didn't shield. It didn't fire back. It disappeared. Not into cloak. Not into warp. It fractured. From the Dominion's perspective, it was instantaneous. One ship became 3, then 9. Then none. Their weapons arc then split, then spun backwards. Beams curved mid-space, missing impossible targets. Projectiles halted in mid-flight. Some reversed course entirely, tearing back into the Varnac fleet like divine punishment. Status! Threx roared. Impossible readings, his engineer screamed. They've inverted our target acquisition. Navigation. Failing, another shouted. Multiple phantom signals. We're seeing ships that aren't, can't, shouldn't. Threx watched in stunned horror as one of his own destroyers opened fire on another. Its weapons scrambled by reinterpreted sensor data. Across the fleet, chaos bloomed. Auto-targeting routines were corrupted. Command queues scrambled. It wasn't just jamming. It was reality denial. On the Nightingale, SAIR's voice was calm. Phase 1 complete. Simulated echoes deployed. Fleet processing loops engaged. All Dominion systems running recursive error cascades. Elias watched the screen as Dominion ships turned on one another. I want Phase 2, he said. Bring in the mirrors. In engineering, Juno's hands moved like lightning. The cryocamber behind her released a hiss. Inside the stasis fluid. Shimmered. Three figures floated within uniforms torn, bodies half lost to time but stabilized in quantum sync. They were dead, and not clones, not simulations. Remnants of crew lost at New Carthage, preserved as entangled quantum resonances. Juno tapped the chamber. The data neural pathways embedded in her skin lit up. Mirrors sensed, she confirmed. Past state reflections ready to project. The ship shuddered, then split again. This time, the Nightingale bloomed across the stars. 100 phantom vessels emerged from light itself, each real in some timelines, each impossible in this one. The Dominion fleet designed for brute force. And centralized AI command buckled under the weight of uncertainty. Their targeting systems couldn't track. Their weaponry couldn't anchor. Their command logic broke entirely. They're fighting us in multiple dimensions, a Varnak officer sobbed. We're not even sure which version is the real one. Inside the Dominion flagship, Threx Varen gritted his teeth. This isn't war, he whispered. This is heresy. But it was too late. On board the Nightingale, Elias leaned forward. Sarah, identify command and control ships. 4 primaries. 9 secondaries. Collapse their outcomes. SAAR's core pulsed. The AI didn't need to fire missiles or plasma beams. Instead, she adjusted likelihoods. Engines misfired. Power cores ruptured. Navigation matrices lost their calculations to entropy. Threx watched helplessly as one of his support carriers imploded. Then another detonated as its torpedo bays activated prematurely. Not from sabotage. Not from attack. From possibility. Elias whispered, we don't destroy ships. We convince. The universe they were never meant to survive. The Dominion fleet, once the most feared force in the quadrant, was being erased not by force but by refusal. A single human vessel had turned physics into a weapon. The enemy didn't understand the rules anymore. And in war, when you can't trust the rules, you've already lost. Then, as the chaos peaked, Sarah spoke again. One Dominion ship remains at optimal certainty threshold. Let it live, Elias said. They need someone to deliver the story. And in that final instant, Threx Varen saw the Nightingale again, not as a broken, outdated relic, but as something monstrous, divine, and absolutely unforgiving. Then it vanished. The silence that followed was not peace. It was fear. A choking, suffocating quiet that blanketed the remains of the Dominion fleet like funeral ash. Fire still bloomed from the ruptured hulls of 7 cruisers. 3 dreadnoughts drifted without power, their cores fused mid-battle. Another 5 warships had vanished without a trace, no explosion, no debris, just a clean subtraction from existence. All of it had taken less than 20 minutes, and in all that time, the Nightingale had not fired a single traditional weapon. On board the Dominion flagship Vexcalion Prime, Vice Marshal Threx Varen stood frozen before his tactical holosphere, sweat beating beneath his hardened exoskin. His claws trembled, a twitch he couldn't control. He had fought in 50 campaigns. He had seen what neutron storms could do to a city. He had stood on the shattered soil of burned-out worlds, but he had never watched his own fleet die in such. Silence. Behind him, his senior communications officer stared blankly at her panel, the interface flickering with unintelligible feedback loops. They're gone, she said. There are no weapon signatures, no warp trails. They just stopped existing. A younger technician muttered, "This isn't technology. It's sorcery." "No," Threx growled, forcing his mind back into order. "It's worse. It's strategy." But even he didn't believe his own words. Far from the Dominion flagship, in the cold black around the remains of the battlefield, the Nightingale floated quietly. Captain Elias Wren stood alone on the bridge. hands clasped behind his back, gazing out over the dead expanse. He wasn't smiling. There was no joy in this, no satisfaction, only clarity. "Report," he said. SAIR's voice flowed through the chamber like calm water. 62 enemy ships confirmed neutralized. 23 disabled. 15 escaped with unrecoverable navigation corruption. Remaining ships disoriented, suffering memory delamination and quantum echo displacement. Probability veil intact. We remain unseen to all but one. Elias didn't need to ask which one. He already knew, and still, he didn't relax. Behind him, the sealed cryocamber hissed again. The frost across its reinforced glass thinned, revealing the outline of a young woman floating inside. Her hair drifted like ink in liquid light, and her expression was peaceful, untouched by the storm that raged just beyond the hull. Elias stepped closer and pressed his palm against the glass. "Not yet," he whispered, "but soon." In the engineering bay, Juno Marek sat cross-legged before the ship's primary quantum lattice core, her fingers resting gently against its glowing surface. The chamber pulsed with harmonic resonance, quantum data flowing like blood through an organism not entirely alive, not entirely machine. SAIR's voice entered her thoughts without sound. "Juno, are you ready?" "Yes," Juno said. "All mirror arrays are synced, all echoes stabilized. The past is aligned." "Then the tether can be released," she nodded. "I understand." With a soft breath, Juno reached inside the field and touched the core. A wave of light erupted outward, washing through the walls of the ship, across the hidden pathways of probability and time, down into the vaults below the engine spine. And one by one, the names began to awaken. They were etched into the inner frame of the Nightingale, the crew of the original ship, the fallen, the sacrificed. Some had died in fire. Others had died in loops, living the same final moments over and over until the quantum coils had managed to capture the right sequence of escape. Those fragments, their thoughts, their instincts, their last commands had been encoded in the ship's temporal neural lattice. Now, Sarah called to them, and they answered. The bridge lights shifted, glowing faintly as chairs once empty filled with flickering outline shapes made of light and memory. Ghosts with substance. Not holograms, not echoes. Elias stood silently as one of them took shape beside him, an older man, lean and sharp-eyed, dressed in an outdated uniform. "Captain," the figure said with a nod, voice layered with static and something else. "She's stable? She's sleeping," Elias replied. "But she'll be ready soon." More voices joined. Tactical specialists, engineers, the ship's old XO, all lost at New Carthage, all woven into the Nightingale's skin like souls, bound in circuitry. Together they were no longer dead, they were legacy. Across space, Dominion reinforcements surged toward the sector warning beacons lit in every system. Fleet Command demanded answers. The survivors of the massacre couldn't give any. They had no telemetry, no visual confirmation, no scans worth transmitting, only screams, static, and a name whispered like a curse. Nightingale. Fleet. Admiral Raka soon arrived with 60 additional ships. He demanded to know what had happened. Threx Varan met him in silence. His voice cracked for the first time in his long military career. "It wasn't a ship," he said. "It was a question." Raka stared at him. "What?" Threx looked out. "The viewport where the dead drifted. A question we never considered. What happens when the one species we laughed at stops asking for respect and starts rewriting the rules?" He turned back, eyes hollow. "And what happens when that ship was never really alone?" On the Nightingale, Elias turned to the now-filled bridge. Ghost crew flickered in their posts, each carrying the weight of a death undone. "Sarah," he said. "Yes, Captain?" "Set course for the next anomaly field. Purpose?" "We test the next phase." He looked to the stars beyond the viewport. "They still think we're fighting for survival. They don't understand. This isn't defense anymore." He clenched, his fists calm fire in his voice. "This is demonstration." The stars shimmered, and one by one they blinked out of view. The Nightingale vanished between them. Space shifted, not with speed, not with light, but with something older, deeper. A movement not of engines or propulsion, but of certainty being rewritten. Where the Nightingale passed, the universe blinked in confusion, forced to reconsider its previous assumptions. There were no hyperspace trails to follow, no warp echoes. Only a hollow ache where the ship had been, like the ringing absence of a bell once struck. When the Nightingale reappeared, it was no longer in Dominion space. It drifted on the edge of an uncharted anomaly field, a stretch of stellar distortion where gravitational currents folded in on themselves and time stuttered like a broken metronome. No one went there, not fleets, not smugglers, not even automated probes. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. It was perfect. On the bridge, Elias sat in the command chair, gaze fixed on the swirling, broken stars ahead. The ghost crew flickered quietly at their stations. Echoes of the past, some old friends, some strangers manifested in brief moments of recognition before fading back into probability. Only two entities on the ship were fully alive. Juno Marek stood barefoot on the glass observation platform, arms crossed, watching the anomaly storm churn ahead of them. The cryocamber behind her no longer hissed, it was fully online. Its occupant's vitals held steady, suspended in a quantum-linked coma. A girl not born through biology, but memory. Her name hadn't been spoken in years. SAIRA's voice rose. Softly. "We are at the designated coordinates. External scans?" Elias asked. "Unchanged, no transmissions, no active signatures. However, the anomaly's waveform is fluctuating. There's something inside. Alive? Not by any traditional metric," SAIRA replied. "But not inert either," Elias stood. "Engage static phase envelope. Prepare entanglement probes." "You're not expecting Dominion forces to follow us in here?" Juno asked, her voice light, but with a buried edge of worry. "They won't," Elias replied. "They're too afraid. And more importantly, they're too rigid. The Dominion only fights where they understand the rules." Juno turned. "But we don't understand these either." Elias looked at her for a long moment. "That's the point." They descended into the anomaly field. The stars outside twisted. Colors not part of the human spectrum bled through the void, and sound subtle vibrations across the hall shivered down their spines. Sarah compensated automatically, filtering raw cosmic data into comprehensible form. But the deeper they moved, the less sense it made. Time drifted. Chrono readouts became erratic. 1 second stretched into 5, then collapsed into half of 1 dot inside the anomaly's heart. They found it. A ship drifting. Dead. Human. And yet, not any human ship. It was the Kestrel, a science vessel that had vanished 12 years ago. Official records listed it as lost. During a quantum core experiment gone wrong. No debris was ever found. It had simply disappeared. But here it was, floating in a place no one could reach, intact. And broadcasting. A single loop, over and over. No encryption. No signature. Elias leaned forward as the signal resolved into clarity. It was a voice, his own. "This is Captain Elias Wren of the UES Kestrel. If you're receiving this..." Then the collapse has already begun. He froze. SAIRA systems flared with warning. Temporal feedback loop forming. This vessel, that vessel is entangled with your pre-kestrel timeline. Juno's eyes widened. You were on that ship? No, Elias whispered. I wasn't, but another me was. Sarah processed 1,000 simulations in a breath. The kestrel was lost in a quantum event, an uncontrolled mirror breach. It entered a bubble reality. This field is the residual echo of that breach. Elias stepped toward the viewport, his chest tightening. What happens if we make contact? Unknown, Sarah answered, but given the signature, this could be the original source of the mirror protocol. Juno looked at him. You mean this is where the Nightingale's tech came from? No, Elias said. This is where it was stolen from. Behind them, the ship trembled. SAIR's core flashed red. New arrival detected. In an instant, 5 Dominion ships emerged from phase space small, fast, designed for pursuit. They had followed the trail after all, somehow, and they weren't alone. A 6th ship emerged behind them, larger, angular, its design unlike any other Dominion vessel. Elias stared. That's not theirs. Correct, Sarah said coldly. That is a hybrid, Dominion in structure, human in core. Juno stepped back. What the hell does that mean? Elias's voice dropped. It means someone's been copying us. The lead Dominion vessel hailed them. Elias allowed the channel. A hologram bloomed on the bridge, a Varnak commander. Younger than Threx, eyes gleaming with ambition and terror. I bring a message, the creature said, voice hollow. From the others. What others? Elias asked. The ones you left behind. The ones your ship fractured? The hologram distorted. For one impossible moment, it showed not a Varnak but a human face, Elias's own, scarred, tired, smiling. I've seen the end. The other, Elias said, and I know how it begins. Juno screamed. The ship's lights flickered, and from the anomaly behind them, the kestrel began to change. Its hull cracked. Light poured from inside it, not fire, not energy. Information, Sarah howled. Captain, she said, voice warping. The kestrel is not just a ship. It is a seed. What kind of seed? Elias asked. Saira responded in a voice deeper layered. A reality anchor. A weapon. Or a door. The Dominion ships opened fire. And Nightingale replied not with missiles, not with lasers, but with a pulse, a wave, a choice. The anomaly exploded into color, and the Nightingale, the kestrel, the pursuing ships, everything vanished into the rift. Reality stuttered, and the galaxy changed. The universe cracked. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't light. It was something deeper, an unseen rift that crawled through the skeleton of space, splitting probability from certainty, untethering cause from effect. Where the Nightingale had passed, into the anomaly, it did not emerge. Not in the way ships usually do. It phased through something not hyperspace, not subspace, but between. A corridor of collapsing timelines and malformed echoes. Colors bled backwards. Time did not move forward, but outward. Elias Wren gripped the command rail as the ship shuddered violently. Sparks fell like snow from the overhead displays. Ghost crew flickered madly, their forms stretched and split, overlapping moments of death and life. One figure wept. Another screamed silently, mid-loop. One simply stood, staring into nothing. SAIRA's voice crackled from all directions, distorted, layered, as though 1,000 versions of her were speaking at once. Quantum tether unstable. Core entanglement collapsing. Cross-reference probabilities rising. Captain, we are no longer in the same stream. Juno Marek held onto the railing beside him, blood trailing from one nostril, her pupils shifting between states as her synthetic brain adapted to impossible input. Where are we? She asked, her voice shaking. Elias didn't answer. He couldn't, because deep in his gut he already knew they weren't in a place. They were in every place he'd ever died. The ship flickered. Hallways changed design, older models, different colors, scarred bulkheads. The engineering bay showed scorch marks from a fire that never happened. The med bay flickered to a version filled with bodies, another where it was empty and pristine, another where a girl his daughter stood smiling before vanishing into static. Sarah tried to stabilize, activating probability anchors. Quantum shielding engaged, reassembling temporal cohesion. Outside, the Kestrel, or what was left of it, hovered, but it was no longer just a ship. It had unfolded like a blooming, terrible flower. Its hull had split along mathematically. Impossible seams, revealing internal structures that pulsed with raw data. It was transmitting, not signals, but states. Possibilities, rewritten and projected into every timeline simultaneously. Inside the Dominion flagship Varaxi 4, Commander. Narrated screamed as his eyes burned. He had made the jump. His ship had survived entry into the anomaly. But now his mind was unraveling. His crew writhed on the floor, experiencing lives that weren't their own. "Stop it," he shouted into the void. "Make it stop." But it didn't, because the anomaly didn't punish. It showed Dot, and what it showed was the one truth that Dominion could never accept. Humanity had been here first, not physically, not militarily, but in thought, in evolution, in the reckless, relentless pursuit of what lay beyond the veil of understanding. Project Oracle had been their tool, but the Nightingale? That was their answer. Elias stumbled to the central console. Ghost hands overlapped his, guiding, correcting, reminding. He keyed the system directly. "Sarah, can you anchor us?" "I can," her voice returned, stronger now, "but I must use the source. The Kestrel's core has seeded the anomaly. It is connected to us, to you." "Then what is it?" he asked. "A ship? A weapon?" "No," she said, and her voice grew. "Quiet. It is a memory, a preserved moment of choice. And it's calling you." Juno stepped forward, pale. "Captain, if you touch that signal, you may not return." He looked at her, this young woman, grown from code and blood, built to carry a future he could never see. "Then let this version of me be the one who understands." He entered the command matrix. The world vanished. Elias stood in a white room. No walls, no floor, just light. And across from him stood ... himself, not the scarred version from the enemy ship, not the man in the mirror from nightmares. This version wore no uniform, no weapons, just a quiet smile and kind eyes that remembered everything. "Wondered when you'd make it," the other Elias said. "What is this?" "A question, one you asked long ago, before the war, before the fleets, before your daughter died." Elias's chest tightened. "Is this real? It doesn't matter. What matters is the answer." The world shifted again. Suddenly, they stood on a hill overlooking Earth, pre-war, pre-space flight, a field of sunflowers, waved in a summer breeze. "This," said the other Elias, "is what you fight for." Elias looked at it, heartbreaking. "But it's gone. Not yet. Not everywhere. Not if you remember who you were before the Nightingale, before the ghosts, before you taught the galaxy to be afraid of a single ship." Tears rolled down his face. "You're saying I can stop it? Undo it?" "No," the other Elias said. "I'm saying you can choose what comes next." Elias opened his eyes. Back on the Nightingale, alarms blared. Dominion ships began to collapse, one by one. Not exploding, but folding inwards, dissolving into particles of outdated thought, systems no longer permitted by the new reality blooming around the anomaly. Juno screamed, "Captain, we're losing all fixed frames." But Elias didn't falter. He keyed one final command. "Sarah, Anchor us. Not to survival, not to vengeance. Anchor us to hope, Sarah processed. The ship's core flared with light. Confirmed. Anchoring quantum weave to target vector. Juno's eyes widened. What vector? Elias turned, voice calm. The future. The Nightingale erupted in light-pure layered quantum light bursting outward into the rift, and the galaxy tilted. The galaxy paused. It wasn't immediate, not all at once. But across hundreds of systems, from Dominion outposts to frontier colonies, something changed. An invisible shift. A pressure at the back of the mind. Like waking from a long dream and not remembering who you were before it began. On Earth, astronomers detected a gravitational hiccup near the edge of the Darren expanse. Just a flicker. Just for a moment. Readings spiked, then vanished. Deep in the Arctic complex beneath Europa's ice crust, a cluster of predictive cores fell silent only to reactivate 32 seconds later, rewritten with new variables. Variables that hadn't been possible before. Across the Meridian Council's Grand Archive, a file once locked, forgotten, erased appeared at the top of every terminal. Nightingale Protocol. Complete. The ship emerged in open space. Alone again. Quiet. The stars were the same, but different, sharper, brighter, as if the light had taken a moment longer to reach this version of the universe. Nightingale no longer hummed. It sang. SIR's voice was calm, stronger than ever. No distortion, no hesitation. Quantum tether reestablished. Multiverse bleed contained. All hostile threads collapsed. Anomaly field sealed. We are stable. Elias Wren stood in the center of the bridge. His uniform was torn. His hair streaked with gray. His eyes older than they should have been, but he was alive. And more importantly, he was anchored. Behind him. Juno Marek rose from where she'd collapsed, blinking away tears. She hadn't realized she'd shed. We made it, she whispered. We actually made it. Yes, Elias said. But into what? In the wreckage of what was once Dominion-controlled space, the surviving warships drifted like broken gods. Communications had fractured. Command structures had imploded under the weight of what they'd witnessed. On board the last functional battleship, Varnak's Resolve, Commander Nareth sat slumped in the corner of the bridge, his claws shaking. The stars had changed. They looked the same. But when he tried to scan them, when he attempted to chart familiar lanes, every calculation returned void. The universe was rewritten. Not destroyed. Evolved. And Earth. Earth had done it. Elias stood before the now open cryocamber. A young girl, barely 12, lay curled inside, breathing softly. Peaceful. Her body had been grown. Synthesized. Quantum anchored. From echoes and genetic memory, but she was real. He brushed her hair back. Her skin was warm. She's still dreaming. Sarah said, She wake up when it's safe, Elias replied. And for once, maybe it really will be. He turned and walked to the forward viewport. Stars stretched endlessly ahead, and between them threads. Visible only now, patterns of probability. Roads between what is and what could be. The Dominion was gone, not dead, but broken. Their systems would take decades to recover. Their pride. Longer. The anomaly had given Elias a choice. And he'd chosen not to erase, not to conquer, but to offer something no war ever had. A path forward. 3 months later, at a gathering held on the newly formed neutral world of Arcadia Prime, every major galactic power met. The Council of Ascended Accord, once a theoretical idea, was now a reality. Ambassador Chun returned from self-exile. Dr. Maya Patel reactivated the Oracle network under new ethical codes. Former Dominion scientists were given sanctuary, not punishment. And at the center of it all stood a man with a quiet voice, wearing no medals, carrying no rank. Just a name that had become legend. Elias Wren. He didn't speak first. He didn't demand applause. He simply uploaded a new file into the Central Galactic Archive, humanity's declaration of quantum peace. It wasn't a treaty. It was a roadmap. A map of the stars as they were now folded, braided, and tangled. And the ships that could now travel not through distance, but through possibility. The future was no longer linear. It was quantum, interwoven, and for once, it was shared. Juno Marek walked beside Elias in the gardens of Arcadia. Children from 50 species played under the light of 2 suns, their laughter untouched by history. Do you think they'll remember? She asked. Elias watched a human boy share food with a crystalline child from Varnak. I hope not, he said. But the story? He smiled faintly. They'll tell it wrong. They'll say we had some super weapon, that we built the ultimate ship, that we scared the galaxy into peace. He paused. But the truth is, we didn't scare them. We showed them that even one ship, just one with a heart, a soul, a dream, could change the course of reality. The Nightingale was placed in orbit above Arcadia, not as a monument, not as a warning, but as a promise. It still pulsed with light, still carried echoes, still listened. And one day, when the galaxy forgot again, when power clouded vision and empires rose once more to conquer instead of connect, someone would step aboard her decks, and she would remember. They laughed at the lone human ship. They didn't laugh anymore. They listened, they learned, and they changed. Because even in the vast, merciless dark, one voice, one ship, one choice can echo forever.